Welcome to the Higher Power Podcast, presented by Higher Power Sports PT, the show dedicated to helping active individuals like you unlock your full potential through expert insights on injury prevention, performance enhancement, and recovery. Kurt Kessler is a board-certified specialist in sports physical therapy and an athletic trainer. In each episode, he and his guests bring you the latest evidence-based strategies to help you move better, feel stronger, and stay injury-free. Let's learn together.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Higher Powered Podcast. Today, another fun episode. We get to share another success story. But today we're going to share it from the viewpoint of a mother of an athlete who I was very fortunate to work with. Her name is Laura. She has been so gracious to, first of all, to work with through this whole process, and then to come on here and kind of share the experience of her son's injury and just kind of walk us through the thought process as a mother of an athlete that was seeking some more of the specific sports-related care. Laura is also a physical therapist, so we were able to bond over that. She treats a much different population than me, which means she's just more of a saint, more of an angel. But so, Laura, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to be here.
All right, so I'm going to let you give a little bit of background on your son, the injury, maybe how it happened and how it was cared for initially.
So David, he's a senior this year, but the injury happened back in November of 2024. He's a lacrosse player, very dedicated to his sport. He plays on the school team. He plays on his club team. The way that lacrosse club works is there's a lot of tournaments in the summer, and then they usually do 2 tournaments in the fall. So fall of his junior year, we were at a tournament, and he took a really hard, what I think was a legal check, and went down. And immediately I knew something was wrong. He ran off the field, cradling his arm, and I knew right away. I knew this because my other son had also had the same injury. So my heart just sank. He ran off the field. I could see the trainer come over to him and talk to him. And at that point, I went over and he said that he felt his shoulder pop out of the socket. He said as he was running off that it went back in. But I knew based on what my other son went through that most likely he had torn his labrum for it to pop out. Like, he felt like it had completely dislocated. So I just, my my stomach just sank. Yeah. So he really still wanted to play the next day. The trainer advised against it, but he was really distraught and he felt like it was fine. It popped back in. We grabbed my other son's shoulder brace to try to lock it in place, and we let him play one more game, but we pretty promptly made an appointment with the orthopedist. He had an MRI. They confirmed that it was a pretty large labral tear. So from there, that was in November of 24. He was scheduled for surgery in December for the labral repair. So we had been through it with my other son. It's like a long recovery process, like 6 months return to play. So surgery was in December. He started some outpatient therapy probably in January at some point, end of January, just going to actually the outpatient PT facility that's associated with his surgeon. They worked with him for several months. He was cleared to come back in June, just in time for a state playoff game. He missed the entire junior season of lacrosse, which was really pretty devastating for him, but he came back for a little bit of play in their state playoff game, which ended up being their last game, unfortunately. But we felt like he was ready to rejoin his club. It must have been his second or third club tournament in June of 25 last summer when he felt it pop out again. So once again, the stress of like, is this happening all over again? We went to the orthopedist. He did a really thorough exam, but he didn't feel like it was torn. It was just a sublux. So he just wanted him to take a break from playing and start some new therapy. And at that point, that's when you and I connected, because I really just wanted to try something different.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's a lot that I can relate to. When I was 20, just before I turned 21, I had a history of subluxing my shoulder many, many times. I never had a full dislocation, but I probably subluxed on 15 different occasions. And the final straw for me was I was playing, it was intramural basketball, and I went to throw a one-handed pass from this position, and as I threw it, shoulder went out and back in. And the next time down the court, I went to shoot a three-pointer, and my shot ended up about 5 feet short of the rim. Because when you have those labral injuries, like especially right away, like it just zaps all of your power. And when you see this, when you see it more in like overhead athletes or baseball players, one of their main complaints is that they just either lose a lot of velocity or just lose a lot of control because they just some of that the way that the brain and the shoulder interact don't always line up. So I always have like an extra pocket of my heart that's a little sensitive to shoulder injuries because and then with me, so I had surgery to repair labrum and rotator cuff, and for me with both of those repairs, the return to play was more in that like 7 to 9 month range. And even when I got back to playing, it still took another like 3 months until I felt relatively comfortable in my sport. I spent the whole summer watching my friends play basketball and not being able to be involved. It is. And so when I started working with David, like I always had that in the back of my mind. Like luckily the time we worked together was not like part of his season, but I know he had to sacrifice a little bit on the club side.
Right.
And so I had it in the back of my mind, but based on the goals that we set for him to have a healthy senior season, that's where we kind of worked through a couple of the nuances of the plan to make it right for him. Yeah. As far as, and one other piece of context, so David is a lacrosse player at the school that I work for. So as he was coming back from the injury the first time, Laura and I had been in contact. We got to know each other. I was a little bit apprehensive about him returning for that state playoff game just based on our conversations, but he was cleared by the surgeon. He had done physical therapy, and I know how much he really wanted to play. So, and again, it was one game, and then we were done, and then into the club stuff. So at that point, Laura and I had gotten to know each other both professionally because we're both physical therapists and just through her son being at the school. And so then I started talking to her about a little bit more about what I do. And when we had those conversations, Laura, what were some of your thoughts before we started working together? What appealed to you that led you to choose this route for David? Anything about the process of what I do or objective measures that I look at that stood out to you as different?
I think for me, I mean, like you mentioned, you and I had worked together already on David's return to play. I saw that you were really keeping a close eye on him, and then when I learned you were also a PT and not only just the AT with the school, I was like, oh, here's a guy who already knows my kid. You have literally watched him on the field. You've watched him play his sport. You know kind of what he's up against out there. Lacrosse is such a physical sport. I didn't know what we were getting into when my boys were young and started playing. I mean, we didn't let them play football, but then we play lacrosse, and it's a really rough sport. There's a lot of contact. And so for me, it was really important to me that you had that context because you've seen him on the field. You even know the position that he plays and what he's doing out there. He plays a defensive position. He takes a lot of hits. One of his main jobs is to bring the ball down the field while everyone is hitting him. Yeah. So, for me, just it was important that I felt like you knew him you knew what he was up against out on the field and exactly what he needed to come back strong. That athletic trainer and sports specific part of it was really important to me.
Yeah, and I love the opportunity that I have both as an athletic trainer and physical therapist to sometimes see the injury happen on the field, be really in charge of the initial acute care of it, and then for those who seek my care on the physical therapy side, just like taking that all the way through from injury to getting back on the field is really a tremendous opportunity for me, and one that I don't take the responsibility lightly. And for David, I was new at I was new at the school last year, so I had not, and he was out with the injury all season, but he was still around the team. I was still getting to talk to him and interact with him, and just kind of learn more about him as a player and as a person, so that eventually when we did work together, it kind of made that, I think, it was a lot easier for me. I think it was a lot easier for David, kind of having that familiarity with who he was working with. When we kind of had the conversation about me taking part of David's care, was there anything throughout the experience, was there anything that you particularly enjoyed? Was there anything that kind of, I'll say exceeded expectations, but I don't mean that in the sense that like I'm so great. I mean that in the sense of like, I know that what I do and like the remote programming side of it can be a little bit abstract because it's just not something that's very common either in the field or just really in our area. So when I explain that to people, like, you know, it can just sound a little bit different, but then to actually see it delivered or see, you know, some of the benefits of it, what was that like for you? I know that you weren't actually doing the exercises as the patient, but from a mother's perspective, what were some of the things that attracted you to that?
I mean, I think for a busy teenage kid, it's great. It gave him a lot of flexibility schedule-wise. For me as a parent, knowing that you use an app for your home exercise program was one of the most attractive things to me, because I think where we struggled in his previous outpatient therapy, going to therapy is really important and doing those exercises, but as a PT also, I know that what the patient is doing at home is sometimes the most important part. And sometimes teenage boys don't realize how important that piece is, and getting those things done and doing them consistently and doing them the way they're supposed to be done. So I felt like having an app where David is logging what he's doing and having that accountability to you was huge for me. You know, you connected with me sometimes like, oh, he hasn't done his exercises, and then I could get him. It's hard with a boy his age, 18 years old. You know, he's in that stage of life where he's kind of doing his own thing. He's managing his own schedule. He's managing his own homework. And I don't always know when he's doing them or not doing them. I'm not in his face 24/7. So I have to trust that he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. But sometimes, of course, as a teenage boy, he's not, or he's forgetting, or he's sidetracked or whatever. So I just felt like finally here's an opportunity where we're really keeping a little bit more dialed in on what he's doing at home, which again, I think is one of the biggest parts of the rehab is being consistent. And if he wasn't, then you could get on him or I could get on him or whatever we needed to do, and then we would usually see an improvement. So I really like that part of the program.
Yeah. And I remember when we first started, one of the big things you said was accountability. You said that he had a tendency to want to get better or want to do X, Y, and Z in his life, but the consistency wasn't always there, which is, I can say from my own experience, spot on for a high school boy.
It's a tough age, and they're busy. I mean, but yeah, I don't know they realize how important it is.
And when we wrapped up a few weeks ago, I sent him a message, and I said, "Oh, how did I phrase it?" It was like, I understand what it's like to be that age, and so my expectation for him was not to be 100% compliant, because I don't think that's realistic for that age. Having said that, there were times where there was maybe 3-4 days in a row where he didn't do it, or a pattern over 2-3 weeks where he was a little bit spotty. And so then I would get on him a little bit and be like, hold him accountable. And he would get back on track, which is great. And I said to him, the times that I got on you about stuff like this was not because I didn't feel like you weren't meeting expectations. It was because I was trying to push you to exceed those expectations. And, I think on my end of this, like, I've worked with high school athletes, I've worked with high school coaches, I've worked with just, I think the youngest, David's probably the youngest. Well, actually, no, I'm working with someone younger now. But that middle school, high school range I have, and then I have people that are in their 60s. So I'm learning each phase of life comes with its own sets of challenges, and that the challenge for David's age is just that consistency piece. So I do think if it was just me handing him a piece of paper, like, it probably would not have gone very well. But that's one part of the reason is, one, the accountability, and two, so that I can be making the most informed decisions based on what the patient is doing in front of me or doing on their own.
Right.
Is there anything throughout the process that you would have either liked done differently, or anything that would be more helpful? This is me just kind of trying to humble myself and say, listen, I know there are holes in what I do. I know I'm not perfect. I know that this thing does not work for everybody. But is there anything along the way that you would feel like would a change that would be made that could help somebody else, or anything that you would have liked done differently?
I mean, I thought what you did worked really well for David. And I think what you do is very much, as PTs, we really need to tailor to everybody's individual needs. I don't know if more in-person check-ins would be helpful. Again, like, if you're being consistent with the home exercises, if you're checking in with each other, that may negate it. But I mean, I felt like we were happy with the course of his PT. We feel like he's in a good place now. He's strong. I feel like he's in position to start lacrosse season this year as best as he can be, and he's strong. And I feel like we've done the best for him, and he's done the best that he could do to put himself in that place. So I thought it went well overall. Yeah.
And for David's plan, he did the hybrid. So he did a couple in-person sessions. We structured it as once a month, and then he was doing the home program, the remote program at home in between. For the plan of care was about 6 months, a little bit short of 6 months. And so how that worked was I would program for him. He would go through the exercises based on what we measured that he needed. And then in the in-person sessions, we focused a little bit more on the nuances. If I was adding more complex exercises, he would need more like real-time feedback to make sure that we were getting the result that we wanted, achieving the desired effect of the exercises. And then once we got him back to full strength, those last 2 months or so, we were really focusing more on the sport-specific movements. We were focusing more on rate of force development, so that there's that element of power in sports, an element of speed, and being able to turn those muscles on quickly, and all the things that we'll say regular people or non-athletes, that might not be a consideration for them, but it was a lot more sport-specific towards the end. And you had mentioned David had done a round of physical therapy prior to returning to play the first time, and I am good friends with the therapist that worked with him, and I've had conversations. We tend to go to lunch every so often, and we still stay in contact because he served as one of my initial mentors when I became a physical therapist. And so we were talking about sports stuff, and he's a very humble guy, and he has his orthopedic specialty, but some of those nuances of sport, he said, like, that's where he kind of relies on people like me a little bit who have more knowledge of sport and the in-depth knowledge of movement in sport. And so because he had this re-injury, I want to make it very clear. It's not because the care he got before was not good enough, or, you know, it's not like they were missing anything. It's just the way that traditional outpatient setting goes. Once you're out of pain, once you have a baseline of strength, once your range of motion is good, that's when insurance really stops wanting to pay for care.
Right.
And when you see a certain volume, like I know they see a lot of post-op cases there, and so like it's a lot. It's many months to begin with to get him back to just that baseline. So it's nothing that went wrong in that traditional process.
Right.
But I'm also going to highlight a little bit of the trends that I've seen with people who have done physical therapy before and then started working with me. So some of David's measurements, we looked at like overhead press. We're talking about a shoulder. So overhead press, ability to move weight overhead. He came in at about 66% strength on his affected side. For a row or a pulling motion, he came in at 70% strength. And then for pushing, or if you think about bench press, he was at about 90%. So you can see where some of those strength gaps were, and that's after completing really good and many months of physical therapy. So these results don't happen overnight, and I always tell people, like, when I start working with them, I can usually find something relevant where they're in that like 60 to 75% strength on their affected side, yet we're pushing so many of these kids back into sport at well less than 100%. Yeah. The only reason is they don't know it because they're not in pain. So I worked with him. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I knew right away, like when we first met and you were talking about some of the strength measurements that you were looking at, that it's a different model of evaluation, and very much more sport specific model of an evaluation than a traditional outpatient setting. Again, I'm not an outpatient therapist. I do very different. I'm in pediatrics. I work in a school, but I've been, I did one of my clinical rotations. Like, those are not measures that I was typically using. We use manual muscle testing, goniometry, the classic kind of things. So when you were looking at really kind of those, really dialed in to some of those strength measures, it really appealed to me because it was something different than what we had looked at before. And I felt like it really dove in to find where his deficits were and figuring out what really he needed to work on.
Yeah, I appreciate you highlighting that. So it took, from the time we started working together in July, it took 3.5 months to get those strength deficits up to 100% to match his unaffected side. And again, I said this a little bit earlier, but at that point, that's when we started really changing our focus from strength to more plyometrics, because if he's falling, if he's taking contact while he's running, like those types of quick movements are what's going to hopefully help him prevent a second one. So, yes. And even though it's shoulder, like, it's a full body sport. You got to be running, you got to be throwing, you got to be watching things. And so, anybody who has followed me on Instagram may have seen some of the stuff that I've been working on with him. And so, incorporating, yes, we need to be strong in the shoulder, but we also worked on a lot of balance. We also worked on a lot of what we call in physical therapy perturbation training, or like either balancing or standing or moving and taking contact, and just trying to dial that in for what he's going to face. One of my posts was, and I sent this to you in a text message, the ab roller exercise. It was like this big fitness thing back in the early 2000s, and our high school gym still has it. But I didn't use it for like just abdominal control. I used it because the way that he was falling and injuring himself was falling with his arm a little bit above head, and then yes. And so we use that to really train that motion so that when it happens, and I'm sure it's going to happen again, and you're going to hold your breath and I'm going to hold my breath, but he's so much better equipped to handle those forces now. So, and I think the last thing I just want to highlight about that is the timeline. Everybody thinks like, okay, I'm out of pain, I'm back to 100%, but it takes consistent effort. It takes consistent strengthening. 3.5 months to get him back to 100%, and that was with, a fair baseline of strength to begin with. So, all these changes that we want to see and all the ways that we prepare them for sport, it just doesn't happen overnight.
And like you're saying, the retraining, like you're retraining the way that he's falling and the movements that he's using. So that's just like a total brain and muscle process to retrain your body the way that is a safer way to fall, a safer way to catch yourself, which I thought was really important.
Yeah. All right. Last kind of topic I want to touch on here is just really focusing on the mother's perspective of this whole process. So, can you talk to me a little bit, just an overarching theme as a mother? What are some of the emotions that you had from injury, from rehab, from re-injury, from this latest round of rehab with me? Like, what is that like on an emotional level for a mother?
It's really hard. Like I said, I mean, we had gone through this with my other son. He actually had 2 surgeries, so he had the labrum repaired twice. So to see David run off the field holding his arm like that, my heart was broken. He had been considering playing lacrosse in college. We had been through some, recruiting messages with coaches, and it just felt like I just saw it all just come crashing down because of the timeline. The timeline was so difficult. We were just heading into his junior year, which would be the most important year for a recruitment standpoint. It was really upsetting. And then, we knew immediately, as soon as I saw him come off the field, I'm like, he's going to miss his whole junior season. And David said to me on the sideline, I'm not having surgery. That was his sideline comment to me. And I was like, okay, we got to do what we got to do. Yeah. So he knew too, because we had both watched his brother go through this. So we were excited to have him come back in the summer, and I had so many tears at that state game to see him back on the field again with his team. This team is such a close-knit team. They're really an extraordinary group of boys. They're all very close-knit, the best of friends. It was really hard for him all season to just be on the sidelines. And so to see him come back, just really got me as a mom to have him back on the field, and then to have it be so short-lived and to have him re-injure like that. I mean, I was just so thankful that we weren't going to need another surgery. I mean, I get it. The shoulder's a really complex joint. It's, the instability can happen, but that's when I just felt like we just need to do something different this time. And I knew right away when we met and you started to talk about how he was going to fall, and I was like, this is what we need to do. Yeah. I just felt like I needed to do something that was more specific to his sport. Yeah. But it's a real roller coaster. And so now we've worked together. I feel like we're at a really good spot, and we are just like a month out from the season, and he's been able to get back into practices again. And I think he's feeling good, and I feel like I've bubble wrapped him as much as I can to start the season strong. And I just want him to have a great senior season. So. Yeah.
Was there, any hesitation in committing to a plan? I always like to make sure I'm communicating that when I'm working with someone, the way that I operate is like, I don't believe in the quick fix. It's going to be a little bit of time here. And especially when I'm working with middle school or high school age kids, like, yes, they need to be on board. They need to be committed, but there's also that layer of, like, the parents almost have to want it just as bad, if not more, than the kids, because you guys are like the primary decision makers for your children. Yeah. So as far as was there any hesitation in committing to a plan that's going to last, 5-6 months?
For me, have you working with him as close to the start of the season actually was appealing to me, because like I said, this is like my version of bubble wrapping him. So to end sooner, then I would be worried that he'd sort of slack off, and then we'd get in a little bit of a little bit of a rut before the season started. But I feel like, we worked together so close to the season start. He's, working out 3 times a week with the team right now and working out some on his own. So for me, it was actually more appealing to work longer, because I wanted to have you working with him as close to the season start as we could. So I had no hesitation about it. The more work, the better. The more work, the more bubble wrapped he is.
That's a really great point about working together close to the start of the season, because not that there's anything that could go wrong, or, that's not the way that I think, but, it just makes it an easier transition when you've put all this work and then you're immediately putting it into practice for what the goal is.
Yeah.
One thing I don't want to shy away from here is the financial aspect of it. Now, and I told him in my wrap-up message, like, make sure you thank your parents, because there are parents who either won't find the value in what I do, or just won't have the available finances to provide that. And that's a whole separate issue that I work through internally. But as far as the financial aspect, did the value of what you paid for the service, or I should say, did the value of what you received from the service match the cost of the service?
I mean, for me, yes. I mean, like I said, I'm counting on you to bubble wrap my kid. Like, I felt like I wanted him to be as prepared, as strong, as safe as he could be to start his senior season. And I feel like that's where he's at. I felt that we were receiving very sport-specific training, all the plyometrics that you talked about, fall techniques, all of those things were not things that he had received before. So for me, there was just such an added value in the specifics of the training.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who's hesitant, or they're on the fence about paying out of pocket for this service versus traditional therapy?
I mean, everybody's in their own individual situation. So, sports are expensive in and of themselves. So I do also feel like if we're going to pour all the money into the equipment and the club sports and everything else, it's a great investment to pour my money into making sure that he is rehabbed and as strong as he can possibly be to play his sport for injury prevention purposes. I mean, we spend money on a lot of things, and this felt like a really worthwhile thing to put the money into, to make sure that he's going to be strong and safe, so that we can, have a great senior season this year. So, like I said, everybody's got their own individual circumstances and finances and personal things going on. But it's like I said, it's a value, and it's a different kind of thing that was being offered for us. And I'm thankful that we're able to do it for him.
Yeah. Well, there's so much to be said about just the mindset of being willing to invest in your child's safety, your child's success. But so one thing that I've noticed, especially with how big club sports have become, is there are parents that are, and I'm sensitive to it, because like for 99% of us, like money's a real thing. Like, we need to be careful with it. We're trying to plan for futures. We're trying to budget, whatever. But there are so many people that pour tons of resources into having their kids play in tournaments, play on club teams, and just not always, whether it's a lack of information, which I'm trying to do on the podcast side, or whatever the limitation may be, like we're putting these kids out there so frequently, putting so many miles on their body, but yet not really building the foundation for strength and movement to have them withstand that over the long term. So I think just the way that you and your husband approached it, from my end, was very special because I know it's not an opportunity that everyone can provide or everybody would provide for their child. For someone who's on the fence about just doing something different, because what you've kind of said it, what I do is just a little bit different. What's your advice to someone who's on the fence about pursuing something like this for their child?
I mean, if your child is an athlete, I just think it's really invaluable. I mean, traditional outpatient therapy, like you said, is going to restore some strength and stability. But if you're really looking at wanting to get back on the field and looking at things that they're going to need on the field, the dynamic skills that they need, the fall techniques, all of those kind of things, it's just a different model. And, we all spend, like I said, sports are super expensive. We spend tons of money on the equipment. Everybody wants to do extra trainings and you pay for it. This is something, it's the same kind of thing. I mean, but this is something that is for their body and for their safety and their protection. So I wouldn't have hesitated to do it again. I mean, it's just, I think, a really great way for an athlete to get the rehab that they need.
Yeah. And one last clarifying thing on my end, and I think we've talked about this clearly enough, but I just want to hit it again. It's not that the traditional outpatient setting is bad. It's not that what I do is better. It's that what I do is different. And yeah. Right. And so
I'm in agreement there as well. I mean, my other son did traditional therapy as well. It was great. I really liked his therapist. His therapist was a shoulder specialist.
Yeah.
He did a different place than what David did. And I have not I think they do a great job. It's just a different model. And
right.
we really just wanted to try something different.
Yeah. Well, Laura, thank you so much for taking the time to do this for me and to hopefully help other moms of athletes who might be considering this. I consider myself very, very fortunate to have gotten to know you and your husband and David through this process. I'm really looking forward to this coming season, but I will also admit that I will be I have something really much invested in his season, and I said to him and I said to you, I can't ever guarantee prevention of any kind of injury, but I will say that he is now in a much, much, much better spot to be able to handle the forces that he'll face on the field. So thank you so much for just being a wonderful person, a wonderful mother of an athlete that I'm working with. I have just been, if I could find a million more of you and then just plop them into my business, I'd be so grateful. So thank you so much for everything.
Well, we are really thankful for the work that you've done with David, for the time that you've spent developing this program, the communication that's both to David but also to me. It's really important. It's sometimes hard in the medical field once they turn 18, so I appreciate our communication and all that you've done for David to get him where he is today. So we're really appreciative of all that you've done for him.
Thanks. I will. I'll see you at the games in a couple weeks here.
Yes.
As the season starts.
I'll be sitting as a nervous mom.
Hopefully not as nervous as you would have been otherwise.
No. I feel like he's in such a much better position than he was when he returned over the summer. I'm really proud of the work that he's done with you. So I'm excited.
Yeah. All right. Well, once again, thanks to Laura for coming on and sharing her perspective. That's going to do it for this episode of the Higher Powered Podcast. For those who are looking to connect, you can find my information in the show notes or find me on Instagram at Higher Power Sports PT. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Higher Powered Podcast, presented by Higher Powered Sports PT. We hope you gained valuable insights on how to stay strong, move better, and prevent injury, all backed by expert knowledge in sports physical therapy and athletic training. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more evidence-based tips and strategies to active individuals just like you. For more resources or to connect with us, head over to hpsportspt.com. That's hpsportspt.com. Remember, you've got the power to perform at your best. Keep training smarter, recovering faster, and living stronger. Just a reminder that the content shared in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It should not be considered medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your health or treatment plan. Thanks for tuning in. We hope to see you next time on the Higher Powered Podcast.